Okay, I think we can get started. So thank you everybody for coming tonight to our third event celebrating local climate solutions in Southern Alberta. This event tonight, we're focusing on the Medicine Hat area. And these events are put on by CPAS Southern Alberta as part of the Science Odyssey Week. And my name is Brent Capeller. I work on the conservation team at CPAS, and I'll be your host for this evening. Next slide. So before we begin, I think that as a representative of the conservation organization and someone who has lived in Southern Alberta for most of my life, I think we should take a moment to reflect on the people who are the original stewards of this land that most of us are calling in from in Southern Alberta. If you're not in Southern Alberta, please reflect on the people in your area. So I apologize, I do have to read the slide because I don't quite have it memorized and I don't want to forget. So CPAS Southern Alberta acknowledges that we work in the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, and Amskapi Piikani First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations, the Ktunaxa Nation, and the Métis Nation of Alberta. And of course, today Southern Alberta is home to Indigenous people from all over North America. So thank you everyone for taking a moment to reflect with me before we begin. So a little bit about us. We are the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. We're a nationwide nonprofit working to protect parks and public lands across Canada. Our chapter in Southern Alberta was born in 1967 out of development pressures in Banff National Park. And since then, we have led conservation efforts in Banff, Kananaskis, and all the way down into the Castle. And we also have an education team, and they offer award-winning education programs, and you'll see a little bit of that tonight. Next slide, thanks. So this event is part of Science Odyssey, as I said, which is Canada's largest celebration of science across the country. And the website is on the slide there if you want to check it out. It goes on until May 16th, so there are lots of great events going on. Our chapter has planned 3 regional events in Southern Alberta. So Monday we were talking about Calgary, last night we were talking about Lethbridge, and tonight is Medicine Hat. And of course, those of you who registered on Zoom have all been entered to win a climate prize pack. Got some awesome at-home actions that you can take for climate change, as well as some cool CPAS swag. So the structure for tonight, we've got 5 speakers lined up for you guys. Each speaker will have about 10 minutes to present, and then depending on how we're doing for timing, we should have time for 1 or 2 questions between the presenters, and then we'll have time for a full panel discussion at the end. So our speakers for tonight are Rob Gardner from Transition Medicine Hat and Drawdown, Alberta, Brent Smith from Medicine Hat College, Genevieve Matthew from Resiliency, which is Southeastern Alberta, Melena McWatt from the Land Stewardship Center, and John Whitten from CPAS Southern Alberta. So our theme for tonight, or our overall guiding question, is what do you see as being the most promising climate solution in Southeast Alberta? And so a little bit of Zoom and Facebook info, I guess. So for those of you on Zoom, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, you've got the chat option, which I think everyone has seen by now, and you can have the raise hand option. So if you raise your hand, then I can unmute you and you can ask your question verbally. And then there's the Q&A box. So you can type your questions in as the presenters are going or in the panel discussion afterwards. If you please use the Q&A box or the raise hand if you have a question. If you put it in the chat, it's likely that I will miss it and then your question will get asked. So if it goes into the Q&A box, then it alerts me that there's a question. And then those of you on Facebook, thank you for joining us. If you have questions, please comment on the video on Facebook and then they will come to me as well. So our first speaker is Rob Gardner. So Rob has promoted nature appreciation and sustainable living for many years. He worked for park agencies in Banff, Southern Ontario, and the tropical island of Mauritius. And you know what, Rob, I did look it up when you sent your bio in, and then I went down a bit of a wormhole watching YouTube documentaries. And now I've got a bit of a travel bug, which is not ideal considering that we can't go anywhere right now. Sorry, anyway, so Rob moved to Medicine Hat to start the interpretive program in Police Point Park. And since then, he has worked for Scouts Canada, the Trans-Canada Trail, and the Nature Conservancy of Canada. He's been active in numerous clubs. Most recently, he started Transition Medicine Hat, a group that supports more sustainable living in southeastern Alberta. He's also active in Drawdown Alberta, which guides community groups in implementing proven technologies to reduce greenhouse gases. Rob, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Brooke, for asking Drawdown to be part of this important discussion. To start with, Drawdown Alberta encourages community groups to implement proven methods of reducing climate change. You may wonder where our name comes from. It's based on a simple concept that climate change would be slowed and even reversed if we draw down the concentration of carbon dioxide using various approaches. This concept has been embraced by many stakeholders under the name carbon capture and storage. Large companies have received grants of tens of millions of dollars to create this technology. This high cost is easily understood if you consider the challenges. To be effective, the infrastructure must have a vast surface area to react with the low concentration of carbon dioxide. The process must be dispersed widely, ideally around the world, but it must require few, if any, non-renewable resources to construct while operating on renewable energy. Considering the space it's bound to consume, other non-climate economic benefits would be advantageous. It should be both simple to operate and inexpensive to build. Some visionary engineers have even suggested the system should be self-replicating using nanobots. What if I told you that such an amazing technology is not only possible, but already exists? Are you getting any ideas there? Yet, in spite of its life-saving capabilities, this process is being actively sabotaged by individuals, companies, and even governments. It hides in plain sight using the codename Gaia, but you may know it better as nature. These nanobots already exist, and we call them seeds. With a proven track record of tens of millions of years, our natural vegetation has stabilized our atmosphere while supporting myriad other creatures. Drawdown recognizes that natural processes not only clean the air of greenhouse gases, but also provide many other valuable services and products. While ecosystems provide these services, Drawdown groups them, while all ecosystems provide these services, Drawdown groups them for ease of discussion. Tropical and temperate forests, grasslands, wetlands, peat, and mangroves each benefit from specific management. The restoration of these diverse sites requires specific approaches as well, but they all lead to substantial absorption of carbon dioxide. Altogether, Project Drawdown identifies 8 distinct nature-based climate solutions. In addition, several solutions involve a more nature-based management of our existing agriculture. A realistic but optimistic evaluation of their uptake indicates that these could indeed provide major mitigation of our climate crisis. Obviously, each region of Earth will be more suitable for certain solutions. Here in southern Alberta, grassland conservation and restoration is particularly appropriate. Many people don't realize that this ecosystem absorbs carbon differently than most other plant communities. When the grass leaves are eaten by cattle, you don't realize it maybe, but a proportional amount of roots also die, unseen underneath the soil, but leaving the carbon in the ground. As the remaining leaves grow back, new roots also grow, using new carbon from the air. In this way, the grazing animals facilitate the steady pumping of carbon from the air to the soil. True, some of those dead roots will quickly rot and release the carbon again, but some organic compounds resist decay, and the stored carbon can last decades or even centuries. And grasses grow quickly. In just a couple of years, restored grassland can be storing significant carbon when trees will still be in the nursery getting ready for planting on the land. If we want to meet the Paris commitments, speed counts. Much of our grassland is already cultivated, so we could be considering restoration, particularly restoring marginal cropland to grassland. For land that stays in cultivation, economic productivity can be maintained or even increased using a process known as regenerative agriculture. Brent will be talking about that in a couple of minutes, but as a bit of a spoiler maybe, strictly speaking, regenerative agriculture isn't a natural process. It involves revisioning farms to create a more complex but still managed agricultural ecosystem. More crops mean more management and skills, which can mean more farmers working the same land. The far greater return per hectare creates opportunities for new, younger farmers. Rural communities can be rejuvenated even as the soil and ecosystem are also brought back to life. At a previous webinar, a participant challenged us by asking how we would spend $1 million to reduce greenhouse gases. My answer, after quite some thought, I would support native grassland conservation by setting up a mobile slaughtering facility that would butcher grass-fed cattle on their home pasture. That may be a bit counterintuitive, but it does support the pasture. The meat would be processed in a local butcher shop and sold to nearby residents. This would keep the high-value, low-impact meat separate from the more common feedlot beef while supporting the local economy. Drawdown Alberta believes that our province can flourish by embracing the many opportunities presented by nature. The technical requirements of nature-based climate mitigation are already well known by land managers. However, the will to increase support for these programs remains elusive. At the same time, the side benefits of this work, economic diversification, rural renewal, new agricultural jobs, means the positive impact will be immediate. We don't have to wait for climate change to be reversed for the process to be worthwhile. In closing, human technology has taken 200 years to create the current climate crisis. Is it likely that technology alone can reverse this situation in only 20 years? A century and a half ago, John Muir wrote that in wildness is the preservation of the earth. He was more prophetic than he realized. Modern society will need to cooperate with wildness to make real progress. So Drawdown Alberta hopes you will join us in promoting the many climate-friendly aspects of our natural environment. If we sound like kindred spirits, please check our website at drawdownalberta.ca for information on how to get involved. In particular, if you know of groups or associations that are already doing this sort of work, please encourage them to contact us. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Rob, for your presentation. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted? Okay. Do we have questions from the audience? If you have a question, please pop it in the Q&A or comment on Facebook. I'm wondering, Rob, if you can speak a little bit about the transition medicine hat work that you're doing and how it relates to your work with Drawdown.
Sure. Transition is an international movement started in Britain, and it's a very positive movement. It's building community and localizing economies in a very positive way. It's not against anything, but it's helping people live more sustainable and more fulfilling lives. It's not really an organization, it's a movement. Here in Medicine Hat, we do have a mailing list of people to find out about events when we're able to hold them. In the meantime, we're starting a demonstration farm just north of Medicine Hat using permaculture principles and trying some unusual techniques and some unusual crops. And we're posting on our website fairly frequently, transitionmedicinehat.ca. And the gallery section there especially shows quite a number of interesting sustainable practices that people may not think about.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. And it looks like Jacqueline is pasting the links for Drawdown and Transition in the chat for people if they want to check it out.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move to our next speaker then. So next up, we have Brent Smith from Medicine Hat College. So Brent completed a BSc in biology from the University of Regina in 1998. As a field technician, he monitored the health of lakes in southern Saskatchewan and helped with some projects looking at climate change and drought in the prairies. He then changed interest from fish to plants. Brent worked as an ecological restoration technician for a couple of years with the Canadian Wildlife Service, restoring native grasslands in Saskatchewan. In 2001, he was hired by the Department of Defense as a range biologist at CFB Suffield, where he worked for almost 15 years. While working at the base, Brent completed a master's in geography using GIS and remote sensing to study fire ecology. During this time, he learned about systems theory and his whole world changed. He quit his job and started a permaculture business, designing sustainable food production systems. He also started teaching at Medicine Hat College, where he is now. And Brent will be officially teaching the college's new agroecology program in September. Brent, take it away.
Thank you. Well, I will admit, this is going to be a challenging presentation for me. I'm used to speaking long and very detailed. So I thought I would take a different approach and speak more like the 40 or 50,000 foot level, trying to zoom out and talk more about general things rather than specific things. So we'll see how this goes. I've never given this talk, so it could be good, it could be bad, I have no idea. Next slide. So I think it's worthwhile talking about what I don't think are climate solutions. So it's good to define what is a solution, but I think it's also worthwhile to define what is not a solution. And I've listed a number of things here, which I think that the science clearly shows are not solutions. So the idea of what's called green capitalism or green economic growth is not a climate solution. Economic growth requires energy. Most of our energy comes from fossil fuels. So the more we want to grow our economy, the more emissions we're going to produce. So that I think is a no-brainer. Carbon tax, I'm still kind of up in the air, but I think the science is pretty clear. Carbon trading is not a viable solution in terms of lowering emissions. Rob touched on this a little bit in his talk, and I'll echo the same comment. The notion or the idea that technology is going to solve climate change, I think, is also a no-brainer. We've known about climate change for 40 years now. And to my knowledge, no technology has been created yet that's going to solve our massive problem as it exists right now. And to go hand in hand with that statement, as much as I support the ideas of the province of Alberta doing research into carbon capture, I think the idea of sequestering carbon dioxide below ground is incredibly risky, and I do not think it's going to work based on the results from Saskatchewan, especially between Weyburn and Estevan, where they tried doing large-scale carbon sequestration. Lastly, more of the same obviously is not going to work. I think we all agree on that. So what are solutions? These are my list, and I think they echo, and I'm sure they're going to echo everyone's talks tonight, but certainly these echo what Rob was saying earlier. We need to have a local agricultural-based economy. We have to go back essentially 50 years in time and run Medicine Hat's economy the way that we used to. I don't think that's necessarily a scary thing. To go along with that, I think we need to have equality. And by that, I mean, everyone should have access to meaningful jobs. And I think going back to an agricultural-based economy can do that. And I think the second part I'll touch on again in a couple of slides here, meaningful jobs are important, not just jobs. I'm biased because I'm trying to start a new program at the college, but sustainable agriculture is a critical part of our climate solution here in Southeast Alberta. The next two, I think, are more challenging because it means changing human behaviors. Reduced consumption is a big one. I think we can all very easily reduce our level of consumption by 50%, much like people lived in the 1970s and still live very fulfilling lives. And that also means by reducing consumption that we're reducing carbon dioxide emissions by a similar amount. And then lastly, I think is the most challenging thing, but it's also the most interesting part of coming up with solutions is making human systems more like natural systems. Human systems are designed for efficiency. They're not designed for resiliency. And I'm sure we're going to hear that word in up and coming talks. Next slide. To me, this sums up what I'm trying to say. So rather than spend 10 or 15 minutes going over my time talking about data and all that stuff, this is, to me, what everyone needs. If you have a garden in the library, you basically have a very fulfilling life, said by someone almost 2,000 years ago. If he said it then and it worked, I think it will continue to work for us now. So I strive for that. I think this is a very good goal. Most importantly, I think we still have a problem recognizing that we need to live within Earth's limits. What does that mean at a local scale? Well, recognizing in Southeast Alberta, our rivers and our lakes are essentially tapped out. Starting in 2001 with the massive drought that we had, the province of Alberta began looking at licenses for water consumption and recognized at that point that a lot of our lakes and rivers are over allocated, meaning that if we were to take all of the water that was licensed to users in Southeast Alberta, there would be no water left to go into Saskatchewan. So that is a limit that we are not going to be able to negotiate. That's going to get more challenging in the future. Second bullet there, working with nature rather than trying to control it. Most of what we do in our human system, our economic system, is trying to control nature. And that comes at a fantastic environmental cost, both in terms of the loss of biodiversity, but also things like climate change. And then lastly, and I'm sure we're going to hear more about this, increasing natural biodiversity. And then as a consequence of that, increasing our resilience, increasing our ability to take punches. And by punches in southeastern Alberta, I'm talking about drought, being able to take on 3 to 5 years of drought year after year, and being able to still produce food and continue on with what we're doing in our own lives. How do we change human behavior? I must give credit to my wife because she came up with this concept. Incentivize and inspire. We need to incentivize people. We need to give them reasons, probably including financially, to change our behavior. And we also need to inspire people to change their behaviors. So I'll talk about this in a second. I'll park that thought. The second part of my slide here, I think, is the most important, which is leveraging feedback loops. And I don't have a lot of time to talk about systems theory and positive and negative feedback loops, but I think the story on the right-hand side that I captured from CBC News captures the problem quite well. Canadians are not happy in their jobs. I think most of us, having gone through the last year with COVID, recognize that a lot of us work in jobs that don't provide satisfaction. We don't gain a sense of fulfillment from those jobs. By localizing our economy, by trying to grow our own food, we restore feedback loops in our own lives that make us healthier and make us feel better. So an example of a positive feedback loop, and you can see the circle there, which I'm trying to represent as a feedback loop, is an easy one from where I'm coming at this in terms of growing our own food. I grow my own food. As a consequence of growing my own food, I'm healthier. I spend more time outside. I'm exercising, and that makes me feel good. As a consequence of me feeling good, I want to grow more food and I want to become healthier. That catches on. That inspires other people to do the exact same thing. The really neat thing about positive feedback loops is they grow exponentially. Looking at the time, I don't have much more to say about that, so I'm going to move on. Feedback loops are everything in systems. So my inspiration to you is to be the change that you want to see. And I'm going to show you the kinds of changes that I'm trying to do in my own personal life, I think on the next slide here. So what am I doing? It's very easy to point fingers and say everyone needs to do this and that. This is what I'm doing in my own small way to become more sustainable, more resilient, and to tackle big picture things like climate change. I grow a lot of my own food. last year, I suppose it was a mixed blessing. One of my pear trees produced 315 pounds of pears, which took a long time to pick. But in the end, I get fulfillment by not only growing that food, but by consuming it. I'm trying to grow all kinds of new and interesting things in Medicine Hat. And I think one of the things that we underestimate about climate change is that it makes new growing potential very easy in places like Medicine Hat. We're now Zone 4B, according to Environment Canada, which opens up all kinds of neat opportunities for growing plants that you would never think could grow here. I grow all kinds of interesting mushrooms. I'm trying to grow all kinds of really, really neat things that I have never tried before. All of this, in the end, in the bigger picture, deals with climate change. I harvest about 5,000 liters of water a year, so I reduce my irrigation needs, having to pump water from the river, chlorinate it, and then send it to my taps. Most of what I grow, not all of it, but most of what I grow relies simply on rainwater alone. I do a whole lot of solar power, so I've got solar panels on my roof. I have a hot tub, but my hot tub is heated by the sun. So there's no need for me to use a whole bunch of fossil energy to heat a luxury. In the end, I have found that becoming more self-sufficient, though, is really what it's all about. Attacking those positive feedback loops, making me feel better about what I'm doing, which then rubs off on other people. I think this is the last slide coming up here. I'm just going to give a quick plug. This is also what I'm doing. As of fall 2021, I tried to actually grab this off the Medicine Hat College website, and I think it was really cool that I grabbed Roxanne's worm farm on the top right there. It was an advertisement, which I think was kind of a coincidence, but really neat nonetheless. We're running a new sustainable agriculture program starting in fall 2021, and I think it will open up all kinds of new and interesting opportunities for agriculture in Southeast Alberta. Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. I'm really looking forward to hearing how the first year of the program goes. I think that this is so exciting. And also, how many pears did you get off of your tree?
Off of one tree, it was 315 pounds last year, and I picked every bloody one of them.
That's a lot of pears. I can't even fathom that many pears. Okay, anyway, sorry. We do have a question in the Q&A, question from Len. It says, if green capitalism is not a solution, obviously regular run-of-the-mill capitalism really is not a solution. Do we have to get past capitalism altogether if we are going to survive the coming climate crisis?
That's a very complicated question. My opinion is that capitalism is going to end regardless. And I think in the meantime, we should be coming up with an alternative system. I don't know what that is, but I think the interesting thing is the possibilities are endless. So while we watch capitalism slowly fade away, we're going to come up with a new system. And it may be going back to what we did 50 or 60 or 100 years ago, I don't know. But I don't think we need to wait for capitalism to die to try and come up with alternatives. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Brent. One of the themes that came out of our conversation in Lethbridge last night was just do it. Don't wait for things to happen, just go out and do it. So yeah, thank you. And Jacqueline pasted the link for your program into the chat as well. Folks want to check it out. Okay, thanks, Brent. So our next speaker this evening is Genevieve Matthew, and Genevieve started Resilient Southeastern Alberta, which is Resiliency. So Genevieve is the facilitator of Climate Conversations Medicine Hat, one of the founders of Resiliency, and an active member of the Master Gardeners Association of Alberta. She believes in the power of gardening to bring us back to nature, and that the climate crisis is a social justice issue, and that it is time to connect with others to define and pursue a world in which we can all flourish. Genevieve, take it away.
Thanks, Brooke. Can you hear me and see me and all the things?
Yes, all the things.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to start out by saying that I'm super grateful to be able to be here tonight with other rad people, and it feels like all my friends are in the audience, so that's nice too. When I was first invited to join this conversation or this series, I kind of thought they made a mistake because I'm not an expert in any of the things. I'm not a climate scientist or any of that. And when I sat with that, when I kind of thought about why I was doubting my abilities, I wondered where that came from and who that was serving. And eventually came to more questions really about, is that what we need right now? Do we need more experts? Do we need more authority figures telling us how to solve all our problems? Converting or, giving sermons to the converted, no offense, but I think a lot of us are already kind of like on board with, engaging in climate solutions. Do we need more money? Do we need more technology? I think Brent's kind of already answered those questions. And yeah, if drawdown, which is awesome, thanks for talking about that, Rob. If drawdown already has over 80 existing solutions lined up, then can't we just kind of sit back and wait for everything to just pan out, watch the glorious victory in this fight for climate solutions? The answer that I came to is no. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share this quote that's kind of been sticking with me for a while. It is from a guy named Gus Speth, who is an American environmental lawyer and advocate. He said, I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. So Gus got a little bit dark, and I kind of agree with Gus that those things are definitely huge problems we're facing today, along with the climate crisis. And I think Brent also touched on where those human characteristics came from in our neoliberal society. Those are kind of defining characteristics. We should be selfish. We should be competing with one another, survival of the fittest, all of these ideas. And I would add to that list self-doubt, which is kind of where I started. So never mind that, yeah, neoliberalism got us into this mess in the first place. I agree with Gus that we need a spiritual and cultural transformation, and I guess a political and economic transformation while we're at it. So yeah, next slide, please. So back to the question. What do you see being the most promising climate solution in this region of Southern Alberta? I appreciate this question, and I think that many of us are trying to look for encouragement, like what can we do, rather than just like doom scrolling all of the things, all of the parts of the climate crisis in like real time. And yeah, shifting the focus towards what we can do. So the first thought that I had when I read this question was exercise, which is kind of silly, but it wasn't because I just wanted to run away. It was because I thought of that saying that many of you have probably heard. Well, what is the best workout? The best workout is the one you actually do. So my first thought was, the best climate solution is going to be the one that we actually do, the thing that we can actually engage in. And when I thought about that in the context of Southern Alberta, I thought that it was necessary to kind of have a better understanding of who is with us, who are we working with, who also needs to engage in a climate solution here in Southern Alberta. Next slide, please. And then I came upon this less than encouraging statistic that in, I think it was 2018, a survey of Albertans, and again, I'll remind everyone, if you don't know, we are the largest greenhouse gas emitter in the country. Not a prize I wanted to win. But yeah, only 46% of Albertans believe that the federal government should take more action to combat climate change. And I'm guessing that's not because they are going to take the action themselves. I think that there might be a lack of engagement in climate solutions because I guess it's coming back to the purpose of this whole series is our disconnect with nature. So I think that John is going to talk about this a little bit more later. I want to talk more specifically about kind of well, actually, that's a lie. I'm going to move to the next slide. Sorry. Perfect. So environmental otherness. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that term or like the term of othering, but this is just the concept that, we as humans are separate from, other than the environment or nature. To many people, nature is something to photograph, a place to spend some time. Unfortunately, also a source of commodities to be exploited. And that's not helping when when people are not engaging with climate solutions, when people are feeling disempowered, are feeling hopeless, and feeling that nature is out there and I am not part of it. Also, I can't be part of the solution when nature is in danger or it's being threatened. So yeah, next slide, please. My solution, my favorite solution, my chosen solution is more subversive than just like encourage people to be part of nature. I want everyone to engage in gardening. And I agree with this quote that gardens bridge one of the central dilemmas of human experience, how human beings relate to their environment. So I believe that the root of the lack of engagement is something that a lot of us have been feeling since the beginning of the pandemic: disconnect and hopelessness. And I think that the pandemic has also kind of brought us to sort of a solution to that as well. We saw more people taking up trowels and watering cans in the last year. I believe in an effort to try to feel more in control and to try to, bring back a sense of normalcy and do something that feels like it's grounded in something. Next slide, please. There are obviously tons of benefits to gardening, and Brent has also spoken to a bunch of them, which is awesome. It is a feedback loop. It's also been associated with improved attention, lower stress, all sorts of, saving money, self-sufficiency skills, building communities, all sorts of good stuff. So I think that also I believe that it's making us better environmentalists. So there's been a Norwegian study that said that people who have more emotional empathy are more likely to have concern for the environment. And putting ourselves in the environment also builds our empathy. So this is my kind of feedback loop, that is more empathy, more concern for the environment, more concern for the environment, more empathy, all the best things. So I think that, people took up gardening this year probably because they were concerned for the food supply. There was kind of some scarcity things going on. And I was really encouraged to see that without doing it kind of on a conscious level, people were almost kind of self-soothing a little bit by engaging in gardening. Next slide, please. So it's hard to engage in gardening. It's hard to be a gardener and like watch a seed germinate and tend to a tiny plant and not want to learn more about nature, not dive deeper into valuing and appreciating nature. So I also believe that gardening is kind of a catalyst for individual empowerment. And I mean, I feel like that happened in my life, and I'm sure that it's happened in other people's lives. It's like a gateway where you grow a couple things. Some of them probably fail, some of them succeed. You build a little compost pile, you grow a huge crop of beans and then you have to find a place to put the beans, or zucchinis is maybe a better example. And you start trading with your neighbor, then you have, you know, so much excess that you can donate it to like a mutual aid group or food bank or something like that. Then you build a worm bin, and you know, before you know it, you're kind of leveling up and building relationships and building communities. So what I would like to see, yes, we need to garden more, but gardening isn't necessarily available to everyone. Next slide, please. Oh, too soon, sorry. You can stay here though. Yeah, these kids are, those handsome kids were in the food forest here in Medicine Hat, which was a rad project, and I won't really have time to talk about it probably, but what I would like to see is providing access to growing spaces, to tools for gardening through, you know, tool libraries, to, you know, there's so many people here in Medicine Hat that are living in a situation where they don't have access to growing space. And then there are probably almost as many people who have growing space that are not able to, or potentially not interested in growing in that space anymore. Bring those people together. Yard share, you know, plant, grow, share a row is another cool project. Community gardens, urban farms, food forests, all of these things. There's also, it was mentioned in my bio that I'm a member of the Master Gardeners Association, which is a resource to support gardeners at all levels, and it's free. So, you know, my role as a master gardener is to support people to grow plants. I would rather talk to people about growing food, but I will talk about plants too, and native species and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm probably running low on time. Who knows what time, but I'm getting close. So without even knowing it, if we can encourage more people to start gardening, they are going to probably unintentionally be engaging with 3 of Drawdown's solutions, 2 of which are in the top 3 most effective solutions to greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, which is reducing food waste. I think gardeners tend to value their food more and are less likely to just huck it in the bin where it's going to rot, rather than you know, in a compost where it will produce some emissions, but it's less likely or not likely to produce methane, just a little bit of CO2. Gardeners eat more plants, and if we choose to engage in regenerative annual cropping, which is another drawdown solution, we're also sequestering carbon, like has been mentioned already. So yeah, other than that, we're probably increasing engagement with nature. We're definitely increasing engagement with nature. We're changing patterns of consumption, questioning the theory of infinite growth on a finite planet, which Brent kind of hinted at too, engaging with our neighbors, building healthy soils and healthy communities, and hopefully voting for people and parties that give a shit about the climate crisis. Next slide, please. So another quote, as we apprentice ourselves to the way of nature, we begin to understand that all of life is in a continuous cycle of giving and receiving. It is the honoring of this cycle that makes us feel at home in ourselves and in relation to the rest of nature. So I believe that to effectively engage in climate solutions, we must move beyond the rhetoric of we're better off as individuals, competing with one another for a shrinking piece of the pie on a sinking ship. The myth of scarcity is fueling the selfishness and greed that kind of got us here in the first place. So I would rather give airtime to, I'd rather not stop giving airtime to people that are kind of like seeding confusion and division in the environmental movement. You know who you are, and or attempting to convince us that there's no feasible solution to the climate crisis, and instead literally start planting our own seeds to nourish our bodies and our minds. And when we find ourselves slipping into apathy and self-doubt, we can remember that we are all in this together, and it's time to step up to build the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, one garden at a time. Thank you.
Thanks, Genevieve, for that presentation. And thank you for keeping it so real, as always. And I think it's important to talk about things like self-doubt and other topics like that, because everyone feels that, but no one wants to talk about it, right? So
I am a big feels person, like big feels all the way. And I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, thank you. What I love about hanging out with you guys and the climate conversations folks is that in the summertime, there's always so many vegetables. I remember I came to a climate conversation in the summer and I think Rob gave me like a giant zucchini and someone else brought some cherry tomatoes and we had a little picnic in the park and it was so great. I'm looking forward to that this summer. But anyway, I do want to give you time to talk quickly about the climate conversations, because I know we're using climate conversation time tonight. And we've got a lot of people on the line that maybe haven't heard of climate conversations. So do you want to just tell people a little bit about that?
I sure would. So climate conversations is not my baby, but I am lucky enough to be part of it and have been, part of kind of keeping it going. It started almost, I guess, a year and a half ago in the fall of 2019. What is time? I don't know. Anyway, it started in Landon Avril's living room with a bunch of people who are wondering how we as not necessarily youth can support youth in engaging in the climate strikes that were happening at that time. And what we came up with was to hold conversations in solidarity at the same time that the strikes were happening. So every Friday at 4, we got together. Anyone can talk about anything. You don't have to be an expert or anything. Ask questions, share resources and victories and whatever. And so, we started doing that. It was every week in real life when we could meet. And then when the weather was nice, we were meeting outside, which was lovely. And then we had to go online, but it's still happening. We're still doing it every second Thursday. So we've changed the days and it's in the evening now. And it's free to join. You can sign up by sending us an email at climateconversationsmh@gmail.com. Resiliency hosts a little page for climate conversations on our website. And there's also a great Slack workspace that we've been using so that we can, instead of just having like every email sent to everyone all the time, we're using a Slack workspace so that we can share information in channels and in channels that are organized by topic. So if you don't want to learn about rainwater harvesting, you don't have to be in that channel. You can just be in the, compost channel or the alternative energy channel or the, radical action channel or whatever you want it to be. There is no radical action channel. That's about it. Join us. It's great. We have like 70 people on our mailing list, which is awesome. And we haven't really promoted ourselves very much. Yeah, does that answer your question, Brooke?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Jacqueline popped the link in the chat for everyone too to join the climate conversations on the Resiliency website. So hopefully you will come and join the group, everybody. Thanks, Genevieve. We will move on to the next speaker now. So the next speaker this evening is Milena McWatt from the Land Stewardship Center. Milena grew up in rural northern Alberta and has a master's in resource and environmental management from Dalhousie University and a degree in biology from the University of Alberta. With professional background in stewardship outreach, environmental education, and project management, Milena is thrilled to be working at the Land Stewardship Center on updating the Green Communities Guide with a fresh focus on nature-based solutions. Milena, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Brooke, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you to all the other panelists. It's been super interesting listening to your presentations, and I'm just really honored to be on this panel tonight. Even though I'm admittedly not from Medicine Hat, I'm calling in from Edmonton. And I wanted to thank all of the attendees as well for your interest in this topic. It's great to see so many people participating in the Zoom call on climate solutions. So thanks everyone for this opportunity to speak a little bit about nature-based solutions tonight. So I'll go to the next slide. So Land Stewardship Center, I might refer to it as LSC at some point in my presentation. We are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We're a registered charity in Alberta with a volunteer board of directors. And we have additional guidance from program advisory committees. And we have a small group of core staff members working on several initiatives. And we can go to the next slide. Our approach to our work focuses on these three main terms: engaging, informing, and enabling stewardship across Alberta. And we work with individuals, community groups, and partner organizations to identify needs relating to stewardship issues in the province. And then we work on informing through building networks, through our partnerships and our relationships. And we enable solutions through our programs, resources, and tools relating to practical applications of stewardship throughout Alberta. LSC's efforts help people to understand the value of ecosystem services, recognize important stewardship priorities, apply key principles in land and resource use decision-making priorities. And we also are always striving to learn from those who provide good examples of what stewardship looks like in practice. And we also really look to organizations like Cpas and others that are presenting here tonight, who are always supporting local stewardship efforts across Alberta, and particularly tonight in an area like Medicine Hat, to advance nature-based solutions, mitigating the impacts of climate change at the local level. So it's really great to be part of this panel tonight, because I'm learning so much about what's going on in Medicine Hat, and it's helping me to do my job better. So our core programs include the Green Acreages program, which is the other half of my job. So when I'm not working on the Green Communities Guide, I'm working on the Green Acreages program. And the Green Communities Guide, the Watershed Stewardship Grant Program, the Conservation Land Registry, the Conservation Easement Registry, and the Alberta Stewardship Network. So we work with individuals and organizations across the province, and we collaborate to deliver our programming. So what I'm really here to talk about tonight is the Green Communities Guide version 2.0. So this is an update of the highly successful and impactful educational and awareness resource that was originally published in 2009. The Green Communities Guide, or the GCG, provides real-world local examples that help growing communities plan and implement strategies to conserve water, protect water quality, preserve agricultural land, and protect critical open spaces and wildlife habitat. Over the years, the GCG has resonated deeply with municipalities and the stewardship community across Alberta. Municipalities, including the MD of Foothills, Parkland County, and the County of Vermilion River, continue to utilize fundamentals from the original GCG from 2009 to guide their sustainability and land use planning efforts. And with a refreshed focus on nature-based solutions and new methods of delivery, including a digital narrative and online format, the new GCG presents audiences with nature-based climate solutions that promote and support sustainable development and conservation of valuable natural resources. So the new guide is going to be available in an online format, and it will be readily available to real estate professionals, municipalities, land use planners, community groups, stewardship organizations, such as those who are on the panel tonight, individuals such as those who are attending tonight's session that might be interested in it, and also land developers across Alberta. And it's really intended to help people plan and implement strategies to conserve valuable natural assets as communities develop and expand. And we were able to do this update to the Green Communities Guide through support from the Alberta Real Estate Foundation. And we're looking to launch the new website in probably July of this year. So stay tuned for that. So the reason that we're doing this big update now is to make sure that the resource is current. So the resource that was developed in 2009 was great. It was a print resource and had tons of information, but as you know, things evolve and things change. And the updated GCG conveys knowledge that helps to advance development solutions that offer climate, biodiversity, and other mutual benefits for people and nature. So the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, defines nature-based solutions. Not sure what's happening. There we go. NBS as actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural and modified ecosystems in ways that address societal challenges effectively and adaptively to both provide human well-being and biodiversity benefits. They are underpinned by benefits that flow from healthy ecosystems and target major challenges like climate change, disaster risk reduction, food and water security, health, and are critical to economic development. So nature-based solutions are really looking at, working with nature, like some of the previous speakers were emphasizing, working with nature instead of working against nature, and really leveraging what nature can provide to our society and to our health and to our infrastructure in terms of risk management when it comes to climate change hazards that our communities are facing. Particularly in this case, in the case of southeastern Alberta. Additionally, the updated version looks more deeply into nature-based solutions for urban communities and links these types of infrastructure with societal benefits, climate change adaptation, and the municipal role in delivering and supporting ecosystem services. This revised focus on utilizing nature-based solutions to support community resiliency is a key and emerging need among developers and municipalities given the issues associated with global climate change. And considering the global pandemic that we're all going through, building back better in regards to community health, sustainability, and resiliency is more critical now than ever before. So now you're getting a sneak peek. This is literally the first time anyone outside of my office has seen what the website is going to look like. So this is very exciting. This is what our homepage is going to look like. Welcome to the Green Communities Guide. The guide is going to be in the format of an online book. And the foundational content will include an introduction to the guide, an introduction to what nature-based solutions are, and some information on nature-based solutions and ecosystem services and biodiversity, some information on nature-based solutions and community livability. So looking at the connections between NBS and community health. So we're looking at social, cultural, physical, and mental health, as well as recreation and even real estate marketability, as it relates to proximity to green space and water features and that kind of thing. We're also going to do a section on municipal planning and nature-based solutions, how municipalities can plan for these sorts of projects in their communities, and the business side of nature-based solutions. So looking at how to evaluate the value of these projects, and how they can often be, in fact, a much better bang for your buck than gray infrastructure solutions. And we're also doing some implementation overviews. So there are many different kinds of nature-based solutions out there. And we're going to be doing overviews of the different types of NBS so that municipalities and developers can get a sense of what sorts of options are available to them. And we're also doing a suite of Alberta-based case studies that will feature and showcase the success of municipalities of various sizes. And I can talk a little bit more during the discussion portion about a case study that we're working on that's a medicine hat focus on riparian restoration that we're working on. So we'll go to the next slide. So the resource will be organized as an online book format, but sort of in a choose your own adventure. So you can follow it in a linear format, or you can jump around to topics that are of interest to you. It will be an open access digital platform, so it will be free to everyone who wants to use it. It is designed as a living resource, so case studies and additional information can be added in an ongoing manner, and we'll be able to update it continually. So if communities take this resource and run with it, and they implement a new NBS project, we can feature them in a case study on our website, and that's what we're hoping to be able to do down the road. So a valuable companion resource that we're also developing sort of alongside the GCG is the Stewardship Directory. So Land Stewardship Center has a Stewardship Directory right now, but we are going to be building that out as a companion piece to the Green Communities Guide, and allowing nature-based solutions practitioners to upload their contact information into this directory to further support the mainstreaming of nature-based solutions in Alberta, and help municipalities and community groups access expertise across the province to help them to implement these types of solutions to climate risk. And so this will be available, and you can search it by different categories and by different topics to find experts across the province that might be able to help you with the project. So nature-based solutions are really, really important. They have been identified as something that can be a significant factor in addressing climate change. However, these solutions and how to implement them are not widely known or well understood. So awareness and a greater understanding of NBS are both needed to promote and increase adoption of these viable approaches to sustainable development. Showing communities what nature-based solutions are, and that they are often a more cost-effective solution to climate hazard mitigation, as well as showcasing success in different sizes of communities across the province, will help to mainstream their uptake in Alberta. So at the Global Climate Action Summit held in San Francisco in 2018, nature-based solutions to the climate crisis were referred to as the forgotten solution. The United Nations also states that nature is one of the most effective ways of combating climate change, and nature-based climate solutions, so actions that are in harmony with nature, incorporate nature conservation and support biodiversity protection, etc., could provide more than a third of the cost-effective climate mitigation needed by 2030. However, these solutions and how to implement them, as I said, are not widely understood. So a study published in Ecology and Society in 2016 highlighted both the high potential and current barriers to implementing nature-based solutions, further illustrating the need for information and tools to help reduce barriers and increase the adoption of these important principles. So this is really where we are coming from at LSC with this update to our resource. We really want to make NBS as accessible as possible to municipalities and developers across our province to help them to uptake this really important and accessible and viable option for mitigating climate risk and improving both our carbon sequestration and water, basically everything to do with mitigating climate hazard. So, and increasing biodiversity in our urban and peri-urban areas. So additionally, in September of 2015, Canada and all the other 192 United Nations member states adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development at the UN General Assembly. So nature-based solutions and the ones that are included in the updated GCG cover off many of the sustainable development goals. And by using the updated Green Communities Guide, municipalities across Alberta will be able to effectively participate more fully in the sustainable development goals and really make a big difference in things like climate action for adaptation, resilience, and mitigation, water management, green space, habitats, and biodiversity, environmental quality, including air quality and waste management, regeneration, land use and urban development, inclusive and effective governance, social justice, cohesion and equity, health and well-being, economic development and decent employment, cultural heritage and cultural diversity, sustainable consumption and production. And just in closing, in the fall economic update in 2020, federal Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland included recommitment to nature-based solutions as part of building back better in the wake of COVID-19. And with all of this in mind, Land Stewardship Center and its partners in this initiative strongly believe that the updated Green Communities Guide serves as an important land use planning, infrastructure, and community design tool that will benefit communities in Alberta and our climate. So you can get in touch with me anytime by email. This is my email address. And you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn for Land Stewardship Center, or you can sign up to receive the Grassroots News, which is our periodic e-newsletter from Land Stewardship Center. And again, the Green Communities Guide website is going to be launched in July. So if you sign up for the Grassroots News, you will receive a notification when that website is launched, and you'll get the URL directly to that new website when it is launched. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Thanks, Milena. This is so exciting. I love that we got to see the first sneak peek of the website. I feel honored. This is great. So we do have one question. We only have time for one question. So I'm going to ask Martha. So Martha is with CWA here in the hat. And her question is, does the Land Stewardship Center work with WPACs? And for those of you in the audience, WPACs are the watershed councils and the watershed alliances across Alberta. And then she goes on to say, our WPAC is working on riparian restoration, including tackling invasive species. So in what ways does the Land Stewardship Center collaborate with WPACs?
Yes, so in fact, that's a great question. Thank you, Martha. We do work with WPACs across the province in a variety of ways. One way is through our watershed stewardship grant. So some of the WPACs receive funding through Land Stewardship Center to do their work through that program. But in fact, I know that my colleague Lauren Van Dyke is working with CWA right now on building a case study for the new Green Communities Guide on the work that your WPAC is doing for Seven Pearsons riparian restoration. So I would love to chat with you further about it. If you jotted down my email, that's amazing. If not, I can chat it to you in the chat. And I'd love to chat with you further about the work that you're doing for riparian restoration, because we are going to feature your work as one of the case studies in the new guide.
Awesome. Thanks, Milena. And we will hear from you again in the panel discussion a little bit later.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So our final speaker of the evening is John Whiddon from Cpas Southern Alberta. So John fills his tank with fresh air whenever he gets a chance, but he prefers high octane free mountain air and wants to ensure that it will be available for generations to come. And he figures the best way to achieve that is to help people fall in love with wild places. Having spent 30 years in public education, he has witnessed the power and inspiration that can come from gatherings like this. John, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Brooke. Good evening, friends. My name, as Brooke said, is John, and I'm a proud member of CPAS Southern Alberta's award-winning education team. Now, you've been sitting and listening for a long time, and I'm a teacher, so I'm going to warn you that right off the bat, I'm going to ask you to participate in a couple of minutes. So, do some of these, whatever you need to do to get going. And to do this, to participate, it's super easy if you have another mobile device around nearby, other than the one you're watching on. But if you don't, that's okay. You can use the one you're watching on, or you can just sit back and enjoy what other people are throwing out there. I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight and with these savvy panelists. Oh my goodness, listening to this information is so fascinating. 1,000 pounds of food, Brent, holy mackerel. I want to be part of this program. It's just fascinating for me to listen to these geniuses from our neck of the woods, and it's exciting. We are all here celebrating these climate solutions and asking the question, what is the most promising climate solution and how we can get involved in it? My approach to that answer, that question, is colored by Colleen and my daughters, who are all in their early 20s. It's wonderful to watch them find their way in this world, but their environmental outlook can be a little dim at times. What are we supposed to do with this mess we're inheriting? And that can create stress and anxiety about the future. We all know that feeling. So what do we do with that? Well, my answer tonight is fairly simple. We've heard all these great things that we can do, so relevant, so intelligent. Again, thanks to all the other panelists for throwing those out to consider. My answer to that question is, we introduce people to nature. Almost invariably, they will fall in love. And history tells us that we protect what we love. Once we're invested in protecting wilderness, innovation, passion, synergy all follow. Now, Cpas has no corner on the best way to facilitate this, but we do have some good ideas. Cpas has a wide range of programs for elementary school classes, many of which take place in the great outdoors: grassland, climate, species at risk, water, snow, forests, a young scientist program. Anything that gets kids out into nature, to me, is a win for everyone. We offer similar programs for secondary students with a more comprehensive list of topics and a deeper dive into each area. And I'm currently developing a new program for mobile devices interfacing with wild places. It seems counterintuitive, but I think it's going to be interesting. And another program involving wildlife that's specific to our corner of the province, such as snakes and cougars. Outdoor programs that Cpas offers include a certified hiking guide who takes students on a guided hike, or in the winter, a snowshoe trek, exploring wetlands, forests, grizzly bear habitat, park ecosystems, and species at risk. Outdoor education is wonderful, but when it is not preferred or possible, we offer classroom presentations involving hands-on learning experiences, including action projects where Cpas educators help classes to choose an environmental issue, create a plan of action to tackle it, and then implement their action plan. And when that's not possible, thanks to pandemics, we even offer online programming. Now, so far, I've focused on school programs. Can you tell I'm a teacher? But we also offer engaging adult workshops, outdoor programs for teachers, new immigrants, corporations, and other community groups. And to give you a small taste of one of our favorite interactive tools, not to mention a chance for you to engage a different part of your brain and maybe move around a bit, allow me to introduce you to Menti. Now, Menti is a great little tool for asking questions and synthesizing the answers into what one website calls a Wordle. Now, if you're not sure what the heck I'm talking about with a Wordle, we're going to try it out right here. So panelists, you should enjoy this and join in the fun as well. So what you can do now is, if you have that extra device sitting around, your phone, for example, all you have to do is open the camera and you focus the camera onto that QR code on the right-hand side of the screen. Oh boy, shout out to Hira. Hira is our guru in the background running this whole thing, and everything's so smooth. When you focus on that QR code with your camera on your phone, it should prompt you to open a website. So go ahead and click on that link and it'll take you to this question that we're going to look at in just a second. If you're using your own computer, the device you're using to watch this webinar, you just open up a new browser, look over on the left there to www.menti.com and you type in 94294059. And so we're looking at these images. We'll go back to those in just a second. And if you're on your device, you see them now. So if you're looking at the images, what climate solutions do you see in those 4 images? There's no wrong answers here, and you can enter up to 3 responses. So I'll give you a chance to go ahead and do that now. And if you need a break and you just don't feel like adding your own words in, just grab a coffee or eat the rest of your supper, or scratch your cat or whatever you need to do. And if you have any questions, just hit the raise hand button and we'll answer your questions. And we'll flip back, maybe, yeah. Actually, let's just flip back to the info screen for a sec so we can see that in case somebody missed the QR code or the website. As people are just entering those, we'll take about 30 more seconds to do that. What it's going to do is it's going to synthesize all our words. And if 10 people put water, then water is going to appear huge. And if another answer was only mentioned once, it'll appear smaller off to the side. So you get a sense of the importance based on the number of people who have put that same answer. And as people are entering their info, here we go. We start to, oh my goodness, look at all your answers. Awesome. We'll take about another 20 seconds to do this. And if you want to screen grab it, go ahead. I think it'll be available later because you can go and watch this on the web later if you need to, but education's big. Learning, nature, fun, hands-on, connection, youth engagement, children in nature, permaculture. So many of the things that have been talked about tonight. Give you about another 10 seconds to enter your words and then we'll leave that and move on. And as we're looking at those last words form up on the screen, and here is going to close it off in about 5 more seconds. So squeeze those last words in and then it'll lock in and stay put for a second. As we're looking at those words, think about these things that, Genevieve earlier, when I was talking with her, said, there's a bunch of heavy hitters tonight in this panel. And I agree so much. I feel like the bunter or the light hitter in this panel, but that's exactly what she was saying. We're all part of it. It's not our job to decide if we're doing too little or too much. We just do little things and we just do our own thing, but they've got these great ideas and what we can do. And I'm suggesting that if we can connect people with nature, and they've all said that too, then they will fall in love with it, and on we go with that. So there's your final Wordle. Cool. Thanks for your participation in that. You've had your stretch. And on we go. Why are we so sure that nature connection holds the most climate solution promise, you may ask? Well, for starters, at Cpas, we believe that nature knows best on just about every topic, including climate solutions. Ensuring parks and wild spaces are managed to protect the ecosystems within them, Cpas believes that nature is, in fact, a climate game changer. For example, did you know that native grasslands are enormous carbon captures or sinks? This was mentioned a little bit earlier. Like trees, grasses exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide, and worldwide, they contain over 50% of the world's organic carbon. According to, I believe, Alexis Kinlan's from Edmonton, I believe. According to Alexis, the amount of carbon in the soil helps offset the rise in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And CO2 is the main greenhouse gas, of course, driving climate change. But when carbon is stored in the earth, like when it is incorporated into grassland, soil, or trees, it's locked away from becoming CO2 gas. So with a warming planet on our hands, a wild space's ability to sequester and store massive amounts of organic carbon might just be the leg up we need to secure a carbon neutral new world order. Okay, teach your hat off. Enough teaching. Many of you probably all knew that anyways. So how can we all get involved? Well, let's get people connected to nature. Whether it's one of the Cpas programs, by the way, we're always open to new volunteers, or you inviting a friend or a family member for a walk in the local park, or as Genevieve was so wisely suggesting, help someone plant a garden. So many great ideas to get people outdoors. Just introduce them and give them the opportunity to fall in love. You know, I had a yoga instructor who said, just get on the mat. The size of our actions doesn't matter. Just get out there and make that little bit of difference, because in the end, we will conserve only what we love, and we will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer questions, but these panelists are so smart. I would love to hear your questions for all of them and move right on to the general Q&A section for panelists now. But thanks for tuning in tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say now.
Thank you so much, John, for that presentation. And for those of you in the audience, John is one of our volunteers at Cpas. Fantastic. Anyway, so we can move on to the panel discussion. But before we get to that, I want to throw the guiding question back at you as the audience. And I just want to say that I see a lot of familiar names in the participant list and a lot of names that have been with us all week. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here tonight with us. So the question is, what do you see as being the most promising climate solution in the Medicine Hat region or in southeastern Alberta? And it'll be, I think it's the same code, should still be the same code as the first one. It should just be the next question. Thanks, Kara. All right, so we've had so many great presentations tonight. I hope that everyone calling in has learned a lot, and we can have some great conversation now. So yeah, let us know what you see as being the most promising climate solution. I'm excited to see what this Wordle looks like. Regenerative agriculture, community education, small actions, community, building community. Regenerating grassland. Oh, these are so great. I'm sure that behind the screen, Genevieve is just smiling so wide, talking about community and gardening and regenerative ag. I really struggle to say that word, regenerative. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, we'll leave it open for a few more seconds and then you can close it, Hira. We've asked this question at every event this week, and we can export the Wordles too when they're done. So it's going to be super interesting to compare what they look like across the regions. Okay, voting is closed. Awesome. I like that it has a wide diversity in it. It reflects a lot of the presentations that we had tonight. So we can move into the panel discussion. So panelists, if you want to turn your videos back on. And you should be able to switch your view to gallery in the top if you want to view everyone at the same time. Thanks everyone for your presentations. So we've got lots of questions coming in the Q&A. So, oh, and for people on Zoom, if you can see the Q&A box, if you see a question that you really want asked, if you hit the like button on it, it'll upvote it and it'll move it closer to the top. So we can't get through everyone's questions. I'm gonna ask the ones that appear at the top. So if you really want a question answered, hit like on it and it'll come up. And then for those of you on Facebook, thank you again for being here. And you can comment your question on Facebook and it'll come to me that way. Okay, so let's just get into it. Okay, we just got one upvoted. So what are the recommended avenues for engaging with provincial and federal governments regarding climate solutions outside of voting? Rob, I see you smiling. Do you want to take that one first? Oh, you're muted still, Rob. There we go.
Right there. Yes, I'm getting a little jaded about governments, I'm afraid, after living in Alberta for quite a few years. So I think we should be taking things into our own hands and not worrying about government programs very much. I think there's a lot individuals can do, and there's a lot that individuals can do by getting together into groups and supporting each other.
Go ahead.
I just
Genevieve?
want to, well, normally I would be like, you got this, Rob. We can't trust these people. But recently, just seeing how people have been able to persuade our ignorant, belligerent government to back down on the coal issue, and you know, I think that they're starting to realize, I think that we are starting to realize that we have the power. So I would say that we need to remind ourselves of that, and we need to exert that power where we can, writing letters, signing petitions, yeah, lobbying the government, and you know, voting for the parties that aren't actively trying to screw us and our children. So that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else want to take this question? Okay, we can move on to the next one. I'm just going to read this one out because it's quite long. So it says, with the massive amount of wasted food and organic material, an efficient green bin program could arguably make a big difference by capturing methane from all otherwise left to rot this waste and turning it into electricity or natural gas while putting it through biodigesters. The challenge is how to separate garbage and organics. Thoughts on that? I'm sure that you guys have lots of thoughts on food waste and green bins. Brent, do you want to?
Or someone else can speak to it if they want. Well, yeah, I think that we're, unfortunately, a lot of us feel that we're engaging in climate action by recycling. And I'm not saying we shouldn't recycle, but we're not even doing that very well. I think that if we put energy into composting, either doing it on a small scale, like doing your own composting, or the idea I really like is like a neighborhood compost stations that I guess it always for me is coming back to like building relationships, sharing skills, and sharing the work. So I would like to see something like that happen that involves, you know, an educational component, signage, helping people to understand what can and can't be composted, because it would be great if Medicine Hat did have an industrial composting facility, but it seems unlikely that that's going to be happening anytime in the near future, because it can't be outdoors, I believe, because of potential for pests. It needs to be a controlled environment. So it needs to be like completely enclosed, which is crazy expensive. It's not just a bunch of windrows that you're just like tossing over as they do with the yard waste here in Medicine Hat. So yeah, my 2 cents is that we should all have, well, neighborhood associations, more neighborhood associations, and community compost stations. And yeah, that's it.
Brent, I saw you smiling when I asked the question. Did you want to take it as well?
I want to give a plug to a Calgary company if I can. It's called Eco-Growth. I'll come back to that in a second. To go back to what Genevieve was saying, we should absolutely be composting as much waste as we can. The waste that we cannot compost or recycle, there are ways of generating power from that. So this company called Eco-Growth out of Calgary has found a way to use Hutterite technology, if you can believe it. So there's patents on this developed by Hutterite. It's a high efficiency burning system, essentially, producing only CO2 using household waste. And from that, you can produce electricity, and a whole lot of it. So I'm looking to pair that kind of an energy production system with greenhouses in Medicine Hat, where the heating system is essentially 100% renewable energy. You're taking waste that would otherwise end up at a landfill and you're preventing that stream from producing things like methane. So we have all kinds of neat technology in Alberta to deal with waste. The question is, are we going to take it seriously or not? Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Brent. Do any of the other panelists want to take it? Oh, Rob, yeah, go ahead.
There's a company called Loop Resources who picks up the rotting fruits, vegetables, and any other waste from supermarkets. And they pick it up at a number of local supermarkets, over 150 across the prairie provinces. And they take half a million kilograms of food a month to farmers to feed to animals of various kinds. Whether they feed everything from llamas to chickens. And so that's a great enterprise that's working now. It's free for the supermarkets. No, it's not quite free. They pay a small amount, but it's less than they would pay to take stuff to the landfill. And it goes to a good use, which is being eaten. I should have started with, they do take edible food and they take it to the food bank and other sources, other places like that for human consumption. Whatever they can't do that, they take to for animal feed. So there are these things around. The next step up is institutional kitchens. And I think maybe 20 kitchens in Medicine Hat feed about 2,000 people. I'm thinking about the seniors lodges, the hospital, the college, and a few places like that. And there's a lot of waste that could be gathered in with just a few stops with a delivery truck.
Wow, these are great ideas. Does anybody else want to speak to this question before I move on? All right. So our next question is, how do you think we can best support students experiencing eco-anxiety, especially during the middle school ages, which are known to be turbulent and have low engagement? Yeah,
I'll jump in on that one if you don't mind. Having worked with students for years, and as I mentioned earlier, our girls are in their early 20s, I've become acutely aware that there is a bit of a sense of despair with what they perceive that they're being handed. And I think this is a critical, thanks to whoever asked that question, I think it's a critical thing we need to think about, because they are going to inherit this world and they have some brilliant ideas about how this might be mitigated or dealt with, but we've got to support them in that. You remember what it's like to be young. There's all these great, crazy ideas. We need some elder wisdom to mesh with that. So how do we help them and support them and just help them face this? Now, as a specific example is that the climate conversations, which was mentioned earlier, which is just this wonderful group of people here in Medicine Hat, have had college students, high school students integrating in this process. And it's exciting for us old folks, and it's exciting, I think, for the young folks. And there's this synergy that happens between the generations. And then we're allowed to say to those kids, yeah, this is tricky and let's work on it together. And let's take some little steps so that they don't get despairing and throw up their hands and say, no, I'm out. There's nothing I can do about this. It's over. Because it's not. And if we listen to them, we can come up with some great plans, I think, for the future.
We've got another question that's along the same line, so I'm just going to throw that out to you guys as well, and then we can keep building on it. So it says, how do we support the new generation of climate change and sustainability kids in southeastern Alberta, but also not create a division in families with generational agricultural beliefs? Melena, do you want to take it? I saw you raising your hand as I was going.
Yeah, no, I kind of wanted to jump in with the previous question and sort of build off of what John had said. I think that this question came up in a discussion that I had a few weeks ago in a previous panel discussion with youth, and something that came up for them was just that an opportunity to get involved with local stewardship groups. was really, really meaningful, and just connecting youth with local groups that are doing things on the ground where they can make you know, an impact to their local community was a really meaningful opportunity to give back, to feel like they were contributing and having an impact, and to sort of quell some of those feelings of despair and hopelessness, and to connect them with, you know, like-minded individuals that could help them both with their career path, but also their network and learning as they're growing and developing with these issues. And I think the other thing to support youth that are going through sort of the eco crisis that they're experiencing right now is just really helping them to reconnect with nature. I know Genevieve brought this up in her presentation, but it's very healing to spend time in nature, and just really encouraging those young folks to spend time out in the woods or spend time gardening. Those sorts of things can be very soothing to that anxiety. So, yeah.
Thanks, Milena. Does anybody else want to? Yeah, Genevieve, I saw you just unmuted yourself.
Well, I was just going to speak to the next question that you've just posed from Amber. Hi, Amber. My first thought in how can we support, the next generation of hopefully climate advocates or activists is give them space and support, and let them share how they're feeling, and support that in whatever way we can. And instead of talking about what, you know, I'm thinking about how this series was set up, this speaker event, talk about solutions, talk about the you know, how we're feeling fear. I think a lot of people, especially in families that have generations that are involved in the oil and gas industry or other industries that are kind of not helping us very much at this point in time. Part of the fear is that they don't want to speak out and criticize that person's choices or the impact that they may be having, but we are all in this together, and we need to talk about how we're feeling and how we can move forward. One of the things that I like, one of the solutions I like, it might not be exactly a nature-based solution, but talking about things like a Green New Deal, where we've got solutions, there's jobs to be created. It's not just like you're gonna have to sell your house and live in a yurt and just eat lentils for the rest of your life, and that's it. Good luck, everybody. Like I think that talking about solutions openly is important.
What if I want to live in a yurt for the rest of my life?
Do it. Yurts are so cool.
John, does anyone else want to speak to this question before we move on? Okay, we will move on to the next question. So we've got, so I'm just scrolling. So this question is from Avril, and Avril is asking, do the panelists feel that southeastern Alberta poses specific climate challenges different from other areas in Alberta? And if so, what and how can we address that?
I'll answer all the questions if you want me to answer all the questions, but I know
start it off.
I know the rest of you have things to say. Rob, do you want to say something? No, okay. Well, I was just going to say one of the more significant stressors, I guess, here, like natural stressors, is the lack of water that we get, and how challenging it can be to manage that, and also how fragile that system is. Not just the rainwater that we're receiving, but the water that we're drinking is coming from a river that we don't have much control over. So I would say that is, I mean, is it unique to this area? I don't know. But the fact that we are living in a very arid area, to me, poses a significant challenge. Does that answer the question?
Can I jump in and continue?
Yes.
So just piling on to what Genevieve was saying there, our water cycle is speeding up. So with additional climate change, we're going to see more drought and we're going to see more flooding. So looking at more water insecurity, we're going to have longer droughts. We're going to have longer periods of time where we can't grow crops, because if we have fields underwater, you can't grow food. If it's too dry, you can't grow food. So in terms of food production in Southeast Alberta, it's going to get much, much harder. In terms of infrastructure in Southeast Alberta, which was not designed to deal with our new hydrological system, we're going to see more damage to roads, to culverts, to buildings, things that we have not yet anticipated, we're going to see as a result of our changing climate. So this extends to all facets of our life, not just agriculture. It's going to impact all of us in ways that we had never imagined before.
And just to tack on another quick thought, as far as solutions, I think that understanding how those cycles are happening is important. Brent is doing some really cool work on mapping soil moisture, among other things, which is, you know, the more we know, right? And I think we're going to have to get creative in using the water that we've got and, you know, valuing it more than we are right now. One idea that I'm really interested in is using snow as irrigation water, which is something that, like, until very recently, I was like, snow is water. We can use it for watering. You know, snow is just snow when you're shoveling it or you're playing in it. But yeah, to think of it as a resource that's, you know, it might not be coming down when we're growing our gardens, but we're getting it, and we may as well try to, you know, make use of that in creative ways.
Thanks, everyone. I was hoping that someone was going to give a solution also, so thanks, Genevieve. Okay, we're just going to keep it going because we are running close to time. We've only got 15 minutes left. So our next question is from Kevin, and he is asking, what is your opinion on hydro or aquaponics as a form of sustainable food production? I know a lot of you have opinions on aquaponics. I can see smirks. Who wants to take it first?
Well, I can jump in there, I guess. As Genevieve said, the water is not our most abundant resource here, so it may not be a good idea to bet the farm, so to speak, on an aquaponics operation. At the same time, we have major greenhouses here that are growing a lot of food, but they're spending enormous amounts of energy heating it, and also a lot more energy buying chemical fertilizer to put in there. If they had big tanks full of various kinds of fish down the middle of their greenhouse, these tanks would absorb the excess heat in the daytime and radiate it out at night. Millions of Chinese farmers do this right now. They have big tanks of water in the middle of their greenhouse, and it keeps them warm overnight. So there is a big opportunity there for aquaponics in conjunction with greenhouses. They need the water anyway for the plants, so it's not a wasting of water in any sense. It actually just turns it from fish food into fertilizer, and then into the plants.
Thanks, Rob. Does anybody else want to speak to aquaponics in Southeast Alberta?
Just want to, I guess I'll just quickly, in my opinion, the best solutions are the most accessible solutions. And while people get really creative and develop really interesting aquaponic and hydroponic growing situations or setups, it isn't as accessible as planting in the soils that we have. And we actually have some pretty good soils here in southeastern Alberta. So as far as like sustainable goes, I don't know. I don't love how much plastics are involved, electricity, the expense as well. I personally am more drawn to growing in the soil outdoors, preserving your food, maybe growing something in your window over the winter.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I think, well, I know that a few years ago, there was a commercial fishery in Lake Newell where they caught very large quantities of whitefish, but they had trouble getting enough people to process the fish afterwards. And but they sent them to Winnipeg for marketing there, even though Winnipeg has a lot more bigger lakes nearby. But that's a large-scale aquaponics, just harvesting the fish that are already here, if you can do it in a sustainable way.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So, oh, things are flipping around. Okay, so our next question is, for those without yard space, what methods of growing food are best for apartment and condo life? Hydroponics, community gardens, is it feasible to grow 1,000+ pounds without planting potatoes in my bathtub?
Can I just say first, there is no right or wrong way. It's whatever you want to do. I think the takeaway is just do it. Don't think about it. Well, I suppose think about it in terms of a design, but don't let it hold you back. Do whatever you want and try it and see if it works. I have failed more than I have succeeded in what I've tried. So in the end, the fun is trying something and seeing how it works. You're not going to get better at doing what you're doing until you actually fail. So failing is good.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks,
I agree with
Brent.
Brent.
Yeah.
I agree with Brent in that use what you've got, start where you're at. Don't spend all your money for something, because a lot of products that are being sold greenwashing is everywhere, right? And really, you need some kind of container, and it can be a bathtub. I grew a crop of potatoes in a burlap sack last year, and they were glorious. So you could do that on your balcony, and making your own compost is challenging in an apartment, but you could have a little worm system. You're producing your own fertilizer and dealing with your waste, food waste as well. But there are a lot of great resources about like growing in small spaces. I know the University of Saskatchewan's got some in the gardening section. They've got some great resources about growing in small spaces, and Master Gardeners Associations also have some great resources for that as well.
So just do it. I was at a permaculture seminar last year, like right before COVID, and someone asked a similar question, and the speaker basically said, if you're doing things well in a small space, it's easy for you to scale up. So just get started where you're at, and then when you have a bigger yard, or if you want to get started on a plot of land like what Rob is doing, it's easy to scale up when you want to.
Mm-hmm. And to speak to the part about community gardens, and like community gardens are great. In theory, they can build community depending on how people are engaging with them. And if you want more space, that's definitely an option. You can also potentially engage in things like food forests, or depending on where you live, there might be like an urban agriculture project. There isn't. Well, Rob's working on an urban agriculture, sort of urban, peri-urban agriculture project with the transition thing. So if the person who asked this question is in Medicine Hat and they want to get their hands dirty, they can go out to the transition plot and grow some food. I believe that the system isn't like you get a section and you do your own thing there. I think it's more of a collaborative. Everyone's participating. We're sharing the harvest kind of thing. Maybe Rob wants to speak to that.
Well, that's exactly right, Genevieve, that it's done collectively, and we're hoping to have enough that we'll be able to take food to the food bank or otherwise distribute it to low-income people. But there's a lot of land around here and a lot of places to get involved. In particular, we have vast quantities of lawn that are very rarely used in our city parks department. And they're open to the possibility of creating more community gardens. So I would encourage people to just phone up the Parks Department and ask them, how do I get into a community garden? And are there going to be any more opened up in the next year or two? Because they are open to that if there's some sort of pressure.
Okay, so we have time for, we'll do one more audience question, and then I have one more question for you guys before we wrap up. So the final question is, what are your thoughts about using municipal systems to help promote beneficial or financially penalize hurtful individual actions? For example, smaller fees if you use a smaller garbage bin, reduced fees for using electricity or water at off-peak hours, providing free compost for those who want to contribute to the green bin composting bin. I don't know who wants to take that. John or Milena, do either of you want to start us off? It's a tough question.
Well, maybe I'll start and then
Sure.
we'll think about an answer. The fees are always a challenge. The smaller fee for a smaller garbage can seems like a good idea. I would take a smaller garbage can, but unfortunately we have the size we have because a lot of people will fire stuff in the ditches of the surrounding roads rather than pay another couple of dollars for a bigger garbage can. That's why our landfill prices are so low to avoid people doing that. When it comes to the other utilities, I think just taking all the service fees and lumping them in with the cost of electricity would be a big step forward. Because right now, your bill hardly changes if the amount of electricity is increased by 5 times, because so much of your bill is used up with various service fees that are fixed. They don't vary with the amount of electricity you use. Same is true with natural gas. So just the billing system is not helping people conserve electricity or gas or any other resource.
Yeah, I would echo what Rob just said about the billing system for the utilities, but here in Edmonton, they're actually doing a cart rollout for neighborhoods right now, and we are getting slightly different fees for our carts based on the size of cart that you've selected for your household. So in my house, for example, I have a suite in the basement, so I've chosen to share my cart with the basement, so we're not getting 2 carts. So we have a savings there in that sense. So we're sort of, benefiting from that. So I guess we're already doing what you suggested in this question, but yeah, I mean, I think it's great. It's just that it was more of a convenience for me and not having more bins in my backyard, but rather than not producing more garbage. But I think that it's a good thing to consider. When I walk around the neighborhood with my dog, I see people putting out, 6 and 7 bags of garbage on garbage day, and I wonder, like, who is producing this much garbage, and is this new bin program going to take care of that? Will it be the bin and then the 6 bags of garbage beside the bin, or is there going to be a limit on the amount of garbage that one household can produce? So I don't know how it works in Medicine Hat if there is a limit, but here in Edmonton, it'll be interesting to see how the new program will work with the bin system. So.
I lived in a place where you had to pay to take your garbage to the dump, but you could recycle for free. And I thought that was an incentive that was pretty good, but I do believe, as Rob was saying, that some people just dump their stuff at the end of the dead end road, unfortunately. This question really makes me think that we're maybe looking at things a little bit backwards, and we are trying as individuals to solve problems that we have not really created ourselves, right? Like, I would rather have a conversation about extended producer responsibility. So why are we ending up with so much packaging? Why are we, look at what's in your garbage can right now. It's you didn't want all that dumb non-recyclable plastic and whatever else it is, right? And most of us are like, I wish I didn't have this to deal with. And some of us are making choices not to buy those products, but I would like to see municipalities or governments on whatever level holding producers to account for what they're putting their packaging into, and they should be paying for whatever fees, right? Like, this is silly. This is, I don't know. That's how I'm feeling about it. I'm like, no. You are the ones who should fix this problem, not us. So that's it.
Thanks, everyone. I know we're almost at time, but I really want to end on a positive and uplifting note. So I want to hear from all of you really quickly, and maybe like a sentence or two, what you see the future looking like if we implement all of these climate solutions and we get to the bottom of this. What is your vision for the future?
I'm going to jump in first just to thank you, Brooke, for doing this. It's a visionary thing to take this on. What a great idea. And I also want to mention that some of the questions have been answered by typing in the answers. So if anybody wants to check those out before this ends, there's some answers in there. And I'll just say, I think we don't have to do everything. We don't have to be overwhelmed. We just need to take little steps, and that will give us hope.
Thanks, John. Brent, do you want to go next? I'm just looking at the order on my screen.
Happy, healthy people. That's the future.
Thanks, Brent. Milena?
Leveraging the power of nature to protect our cities and our well-being.
Genevieve?
Does it have to be that short?
No, you can go a little bit longer. 1 to 2 sentences. Your
Because
vision.
I was just going to say everyone lives in yurts. But
everyone lives in yurts.
I would say like a supportive and engaged communities or neighborhood associations or whatever that are coexisting with nature. Well, we're part of it, and supporting one another through this transition, and then celebrating our victories, because we're already on the right track. Just having this conversation tonight feels like winning.
Rob, what's your vision for the future?
Well, I guess building on what Brent suggested, happy people, I'd like to see people expressing more curiosity, more interest in doing things for themselves, learning how things work in a physical way and repairing things. I think there's a lot of stuff people can be doing. It will be having more fun, but spending a lot less money.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for participating in this panel. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the audience. This has been such a great night. I'm so grateful to all of you and everyone on Facebook too. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I don't want to pick favorites, but I did grow up in Medicine Hat and I live in Medicine Hat now. So I was very, very excited for this event tonight. So thank you everyone for being here.
Thanks, Brooke and Cpas and participants.
Thank you, Brooke. Thanks, Cpas, for the opportunity.